Welcome to this week's class on about environmental pollution and control. Environmental pollution and control is a facet under environmental health. In environmental health, we look at various aspects of various aspects that basically of the environment that basically affects the health of the population. Now, environmental pollution and control has three, just from the word, the title itself, has, you can see, and there's the word environment, there's pollution, and there's control. So all these have an effect, are rather interrelated with each other, and as such, it is important to look at them coincidentally. So to start off, in general, we look at the term environmental pollution. Now, environmental pollution here refers to introducing a pollutant that has that can cause either a physical, a chemical, or a biological change to the environment. So the pollutant itself is any substance. It can be defined as a substance that can cause a nuisance or a harmful effect to the environment. In this case, to the natural environment and the built environment. Now, the pollutant introduced can cause either the effect itself can be harmful or rather detrimental to the ecosystem of the ecosystem in which the inhabitant or the organism or the human, the person who resides in. So you can see, so that's from the definition itself of having a pollutant, then the term pollution comes in. So it can be defined as a way that as the influence of any substance that causes a nuisance or either harmful effects or uneasiness to organisms. So when it comes to pollutions, these are categories of pollutions. One is air pollution. Two is water pollution, soil pollution, or rather land pollution, and noise pollution. Now, all these effects are found in the environment. As I said, the environment has a component of the built and the natural environment. So the components, air in itself, is the component of the environment. If you look at the global, how the world is, there are different categories of the atmosphere, or rather what you call the biosphere. So you can have the hydrosphere, you can have the lithosphere, and also and the lithosphere, of course. And all these forms of pollutions occur depending on where it is. Now, the type of pollutants, as I said, is any substance that can cause detrimental effects on any organism or rather in the ecosystem. So all these have an interrelationship. So one form of pollution affects the other type of pollution. So, and again, now, as I said, pollution has an effect to the environment. Now, the pollutant itself, as we defined it, as is any substance. So the substance can take different forms or other categories that are out there. So an example of a pollutant is radiological. A radiological pollutant has to do with elements of nuclear activity. The nature of that pollutant, nuclear activity can cause nuclear substance, can result to a biological, rather a radiological pollution, form of pollution. And also another form is biological, a biological pollutant. In terms of biological pollutant, I'm talking of aspects that, such as introducing a component that either increases or decreases organic components of that particular form into the, perhaps if you say a biological, if I introduce a biological pollutant into water, then what is the effect of that? You look at the effect of that pollutant into, in that, say, form of water. So now another form is organic pollutant, another category. Then we have acid also as a form of pollutant. When it comes to acid, we look at it in terms of what we call the pH, the alkalinity and the acidity. How does that, what is the effect of acidity and alkalinity on the environment, the built and the physical environment? Or what is the resultant effect that it can have on the ecosystem, or rather the ecology? Then we have the physical types of pollutants. So the physical type of pollutants are the solid forms. For example, like trash, the way we normally throw perhaps a piece of paper, those takes the nature itself is more in physical nature. Inorganic has to do with components that cannot be easily biodegradable by the environment. So it needs, an example which we can have is in form of nitrates, sulfates. Those forms take an inorganic nature. So there are common terminologies that concerns, or rather terminologies that will always come about when it comes to environmental pollution. One of those is the biogeochemical cycles. Now, understanding biogeochemical cycles, you'll have to go back to the ecology classes. Now, we discussed ecology as the study of the interrelationship between the abiotic and the abiotic factors. Now, the interrelationship between the biotic and the biotic factors are now dependent on the biogeochemical cycles. An example of the biogeochemical cycle is the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycles, and also the sulfur and phosphorus cycles. The carbon cycle is so critical, as well as the nitrogen cycle, in terms of support system to the ecosystem, to the rather support of abiotic biotic factors, components of the rather say the biosphere. Now, the definition of ecology in itself, as I said, is just the study of interrelationship among organisms and between organisms and all aspects, living and non-living, in their environment. Now, all that forms an ecosystem. Then we have the term ecosystem, because we live, you see, is a cyclic mechanisms that describes the interdependence of species in the living world. Now, when it comes to ecosystem, what forms an ecosystem? As you can recall, the most basic form of life is a cell. So when a group of cells, when you combine a group of cells, then you have, you can have an organ system. When you have an organ system, a combination, then you have an organism. And a combination of organisms, then you have individuals. Then when you have individuals, you form a population. Then when it comes a group of populations, that translates to becomes a community itself, and then eventually, now all those have an effect. Now, you can have species also as a component of when you have individuals, a group of individuals also form species, which becomes a critical component when it comes to ecosystem. And that's when it comes to when you look at environmental pollution, the effects of pollutants and also the survival of species, then we underscore the need to conserve, or rather to look at matters of pollution itself. So, as I listed there, the examples include the biogeochemical and geochemical cycles. Now, these cycles form the fundamental part of pollution, what we call the pollution science, the science in pollution. Because in any, there's always a way in which these effects have to be rather discussed, or rather have a way of working itself. Now, biogeochemical cycles is a fundamental component, as I've discussed, as a definition. So, in itself, when it comes to, as a fundamental science, you look at the critical carbon cycle. How does carbon cycle now, in-depthly, the movement of carbon from the environment through the different forms, from the land to air and back and forth. How is it obtained, and how important it is? So those are the roles that you look at. What is the nitrogen cycle? Now, nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, and the of course, also sulfur, the sulfur cycle. Those forms what the critical components in understanding pollution. That's why it's called pollution science. Another component that is so vital is how energy flows within the ecosystem, or rather, you see, movement of energy through the biosphere. Now, the movement of energy is guided by the laws of conservation of energy, which we've discussed it in our initial class in ecology. And I would urge you now to look back and look into the laws of conservation of energy. Look at the first law and the second law of conservation of energy. Now, when it comes to pollution science, we look at also, we need to quantify and measure. So you need to look at the units of measurements that are used in pollution science. The standard way of doing that is by using the units, the standard, the SI units of measurements. You can have length, mass, volumes, depending on the nature of nature of what you really category, what you want to measure, then that applies to also. Now, but it is important to look at using the standard classification, the international standard classifications that have put in place. So, of importance now when it comes to pollution, you look at now, for example, when you're talking about liquids, we're looking at the concentrations of substance dissolved in water, and it is expressed as in terms of weight per unit volume of mixture. Now, weight has a standard when it comes to through the use of SI. Weight can be measured in grams, kilograms, and such forth. So, because the nature of pollutant might be so, to quantify that, then we express it in terms of weight of substance per unit volume of each of the mixture. So, for example, is parts per million or parts per billion. You see that the nature in terms of millions and billions. You can see the quantity. It's so huge. Magnanimous. Then we have gases. When it comes to gases of vapor, then we express the concentration in volumetric terms. When it comes to volumetric terms, then refer again to the standard SI units of measurements. How is it measured? So the concentration of a gaseous pollutant can be measured in parts per million, and it's given by the equation out there. Parts of contamination per million parts of air. So bottom line, when it comes to units of measurement, then we need to underscore that pollution, like any other science, has a foundation of observation and numerical analysis. You have to quantify to what extent are we talking of. Do we say it is achieved the term pollution? How do we say? Then we express such through use of measurements. Now, as I said earlier, there are categories of pollution. Now, we'll first begin with water pollution. So water pollution can be defined as alteration of either the physical, the chemical, or the biological characteristic of water through natural and human activities. So this can be done by introducing pollutants into water that contaminate and alter their physical or either the chemical characteristics and biological characteristics. Now, we know water for most for human, or rather, we draw much of our water from fresh water for various uses. So which can be used for drinking. You can use it for agricultural activities, for recreation, depending on the nature of your activity. So all these is dependent on the quantity of how clean, or rather, how clean the water is. Now, so when it comes to water pollution, the chief source of water pollution is mostly man-made, and when it comes to man-made, then it refers to the activities that you as man who does it, the activities that people do, and how it introduces. So the way it, so through those activities, then you introduce water pollutants into water. Now, other natural forms like volcanic eruptions, not erosions, but eruptions, can also introduce pollutants, depending on. So the pollutants, as I said earlier, the categories of pollutants can either be radioactive, radiological, but inorganic, organic. So it changes. So the other sources can be classified basically as municipal wastewater, industrial waste, inorganic pollutants, agricultural waste, and then you can also have those effects that affect marine, or rather seawater. Then we have thermal as a source of. Now, when it comes to look at industrial pollutants, these are sources of pollutants that are derived from industries, and such form they take the form of chemicals. The major industries that majorly contribute or produce pollutants include chemical industries, metallurgical industries, those that deal with metals, food processing industries, textiles, and also paper industries, where they use different forms of components. And when these components are discharged into sources of water, then it becomes one way or the other toxic, or once it is contaminated. So, and that has an effect to the ecosystem within the water ecosystem. Now, examples of inorganic pollutants: we have chlorides, sulfates, oxides of iron, cadmium, and alkalis. All these have their own individual properties, and now it affects the physical and the chemical and also the biological characteristics of water. Other examples, inorganic, will include oils, fats, phenols, grease. All these also alter inorganic compounds, inorganic compounds. They alter the physical characteristics of water, or rather all the characteristics of water. Then agricultural waste, as I said, agriculture is as a result of human activity that is so vital to the society. So the use of excessive chemicals, fertilizers, and pesticides actually, in terms of agriculture, it is vital itself, because we need to sustain, when it comes to matters of food security, they play a critical role. However, the continuous use of such chemicals, fertilizers, and pesticides will always have a resultant effect, a net effect on water source and on water. It always alters the physical characteristics of water itself. Now, when it comes to the use, now it depends on the quantity or the amount of chemical or fertilizers that have been used. So any excessive amount, depending on the concentration and the duration in which it is applied, will always have an effect on the ecosystems. Then, when it comes to marine, water sources are, when you look at the water source, from rivers to reservoirs, they all end up, we have oceans. We always end up to the oceans. Now, when you introduce all the inorganic and the organic components and industrial waste into water, from at different stages of the course of a water source, for example, like a river, it eventually leads up to the sea. And when it comes to sea, then the resultant effect is that we have an effect on the marine pollution. So all these forms of pollutants will always end up at sea. So depending on the category of that, the concentration can be found rather when you do a lab analysis of marine pollution, then you'll get to see the concentration based on the levels of measurements that the units of measurements that we've discussed earlier. Then thermal pollution, as I said, results from increased temperature of water. And this can be caused by introducing, perhaps, for example, a radiological pollutant. So that can have a resultant effect on the temperature of water, or especially with the water source, and has an effect on the ecosystem. You can see there is a loss of aquatic animals, and also the aquatic interfere with the rather aquatic ecosystems with that. Then we have air pollution. Air pollution basically is, I think, one of the most noticeable forms of pollution, because since we breathe in, then outrightly it becomes an easier way of identifying. So again, air pollution takes, from the definition of pollution, is you introduce chemicals or pollutants into air. Now the concentration will differ, and it's depending on various factors, and as a result it can cause discomfort to humans and other living organisms, to the natural, especially to the natural environment, and also to the atmosphere. When it comes to air pollution, we look at now the aspects of most, you get to hear of climate change. What the effects, climate change has been attributed to a lot to air pollution. So any substance that can cause a change of the physical component of air then becomes So these are the common criteria of air pollutants. So we have the carbon monoxide, we have sulfur dioxide, we also have particulates, lead particulates, nitrogen oxides. So all these, when exposed to air, then they cause results to air pollution. So what are the consequences of air pollution? An example, CO2, carbon dioxide, is a very good transmitter of sunlight. So it plays a very important role, especially when you look at the carbon cycle, as we said earlier. So CO2, a large concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere causes global warming. And now that is the rise of temperatures in the environment. And that has a resultant effect as well. Then look at the land pollution, or rather soil pollution. So land pollution is mostly influenced by activities caused by people, majorly people. Other forms, natural forms, like eruptions, earthquakes, can also introduce pollutants into itself. So, so land itself, rather soil pollution, is important, especially for survival of organism and also human being, because one way or the other we depend on soil for agriculture, for food purposes. And so when such is interfered with, when you introduce pollutants into it, then it has an effect. So urbanization and industrialization are the major causes. Urbanization has always changed because of various factors. The need to look for solutions. So that causes migration patterns, interferes due to migration of people. So the major forms of land pollution: construction industry, agriculture, domestic waste, and industrial waste. All these are actually the major forms of soil pollution. So how does each, now buildings takes up a lot of resource and land use. So as you do away, as you construct, you either introduce, as I say, the physical, when you look at the categories of pollutants, construction introduces a lot of physical pollutants into it. And those pollutants have an effect on the soil ecosystem. So agriculture, I'd mentioned agriculture. When it comes to agriculture, the use of excessive fertilizers, pesticides. So depending on their concentrations, levels, and the duration in which it has been applied, and also the chemical component of each fertilizer, then it will cause a form of pollution. Now, additional include, then you have domestic waste, which are dumped from every day, from homes, offices, and also from incinerators. Then we have industrial waste. These are waste from industries. Depending on the nature of industry, be it a food processing industry, will have its own form of type of waste. And also, yeah, on that way. Then noise pollution as the last form. So noise can be defined as undesirable sound that causes a lot of physiological and disturbance to them. So it interrupts normal activity. So it is excessive. When it becomes excessive, then it becomes a form of pollution. So when it comes to measurement, the recommended is the unit of measurement is decibels, and the World WHO has a recommended levels of measurements, decibels, that noise shouldn't be exceeded when it comes to human. The other major sources of noise, transportation systems are actually the major contributors of noise pollution, especially more in urban areas. Constructions of whether any form, highways, buildings, and also industries, loudspeakers. The effects can cause physiological and has an effect on the physiological and the psychological health of a population. So an example can introduce to stress-related illnesses such as sleep disruption, hearing loss, loss of productivity due to disturbances caused by noise. To some extent, depending on the degree of in which it can result to depression to individuals also. So what are some of the solutions? Of course, legislation can be one of those. Having recommended laws that basically guide you on what not to go past or go exceed. Social awareness programs can also aid in controlling noise pollution. Of course, improving equipments, especially for those in industries, in one way or the other, results to reduction in noise pollution. Regulations, as I said, can impose factories, location of factories. When it comes to zoning, those industries should be located far away from residential areas that can cause effects of residential areas where people stay. So that concludes the various forms, all the major components of environmental pollution and control measures. Thank you for your time.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.